Meanwhile, we turn now to Capitol Hill, where the 115th Congress will be sworn in today. And in, well, something of a surprise move ahead of that swearing in, House Republicans made ethics oversight their first order of business. Last night, House Republicans voted in a closed-door meeting to put the Office of Congressional Ethics, an independent body, under the control of the Republican-led House Ethics Committee. That change, again, would essentially dismantle the independent body in question and so give Congress more power to police its own behavior. Edward Isaac Dovere is the chief Washington correspondent for Politico and joins me now from Washington. Isaac, thanks for being here. Again, the response, first from Democratic leaders, was certainly swift. Elizabeth Warren tweeted, and I quote, "Tell us, GOP, who exactly thinks that the problem with Washington is that we have too many rules requiring the government to act ethically?" Chuck Schumer had this to say, and I quote, "House GOP votes to turn independent ethics office into an unread complaint box. Why won't GOP keep their party promise to, say it with me all, drain the swamp?" So, Isaac, what to make of it all?
Well, look, there's no mistaking what happened here. This was an independent body that has now been brought under the control of the Republican majority in the House. It can no longer take anonymous complaints or tips from anyone, which obviously could have an effect on limiting the amount of information coming into it. It cannot go public with any of the information that is going on. And we know that the changes were spearheaded by people who were under investigation or had been under investigation by this body in the past couple of years. That leads to a lot of questions about what the actual motivations were for getting rid of the independent body and where things would stand with any kind of ethics investigations in Congress, which, look, you just need to pay attention to anything that's been going on any time in the last couple of years or any time really in Congress's history to know that ethics problems crop up. And an independent body, importantly, this one created after the whole Jack Abramoff scandal about a decade ago, is now gone. And that's the first move that this new Republican majority has taken in the 115th Congress.
And that really is the point here. Number one, again, this was a body created for a reason. It has now been, to your point there, not just gutted. It is essentially gone now. It no longer exists. Interestingly, though, House Speaker Paul Ryan, Republican, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican, both did reportedly speak against this measure. Why do you think they did?
Well, it seems like their argument is that the majority of their conference wants this to happen. But we know that bills do not reach the floor of the House without the House Speaker letting them reach the floor of the House. He is making it possible for it to get there. Obviously, to just go back to where things were with immigration reform, for example, when John Boehner was Speaker and when Paul Ryan was Speaker, that was a bill that was batting around in the House for a long time but never went to the floor because the House Speaker didn't put it there. This is a bill that is, it seems like, going to the floor because Paul Ryan is letting it happen, and we'll see how he votes, whether in the end he votes in favor of it or against it.
Meanwhile, let's look ahead. We do see other policy fights on the horizon. Certainly the Affordable Care Act squarely in the crosshairs here, as we've all known now for some time. President-elect Donald Trump this morning took to his preferred medium to criticize the law. It seems as though the fait accompli here is the repealing of the Affordable Care Act. I wonder, though, where we stand on the replacing portion of it.
Well, I don't know that we should say that it's a fait accompli because though it is clear that the Republican majorities in Congress want to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, and President-elect Trump has spoken very forcefully about it, actually doing it may get very complicated. There are 20 to 22 million people whose health insurance will disappear because of any repeal, and if they don't figure out how to have a replacement plan as part of it, it may make the repeal more complicated than it seems in the speaking about it so far. One of the ideas that we've seen tossed about is repealing it and then having a 3-year period of time until that repeal comes into effect while they figure out a replacement plan. We just don't know what the Republican majority will do now that they no longer have a person in the White House in Barack Obama who would have stopped any repeal from going forward.
And is said again to be sitting down with his congressional colleagues looking to perhaps save portions of it. I do know one House Speaker who thinks he maybe has just the thing to replace it. I'm interestingly here, Isaac, I mentioned that Mr. Trump took to Twitter again
Yep.
to criticize Obamacare. He also went after General Motors
Yep.
for selling foreign-made cars here in the United States. It actually impacted their stock price briefly. Yesterday, he blasted North Korea and China on Twitter. And this morning's New York Times has an interesting way perhaps to look at it. David Brooks, the columnist, wrote this, and I quote, his, meaning Donald Trump's, statements should probably be treated less like policy declarations and more like Snapchat. They exist to win attention at the moment, but then they disappear. What do you make of it?
That's certainly true of some of them, but not all of them. You think to last week when one morning started with President-elect Trump blasting President Obama for making trouble in the transition and setting up roadblocks, and by the evening he was saying that things were going very smoothly. That seems to have been one of those passing moments on Twitter. But other of these do seem like they are pronouncements, and we just have to sort through them as they come through and make a judgment based on other reporting of what is real and what's not, and what's a moment of peak and what's not. But the other thing about it is, and take the North Korea tweet, of course, is that just because some of it may get dismissed as internal politics by people here in America, that doesn't mean that that's how these things are being seen around the world. Yep. And that's another factor that's going into this.
Yeah, in that position, I think it's fair to say words certainly matter. Politico's Edward Isaac Dovere. Isaac, very much appreciate the time. Thanks for it.
Thanks, Josh.